The following is a presentation of the Mat Talk Podcast Network.
Having surpassed $250,000 in proceeds, Takedown Cancer kicks off its sixth season at the November 25th Golden Gopher Wrestling Duel against South Dakota State at 1 p.m. at Maturi Pavilion. All funds raised go directly to the Randy Shaver Cancer Research and Community Fund, a charity that maintains an extraordinary high 92% efficiency rating. The funding is directed toward the best and brightest cancer researchers in the world as they advance on a wide array of new cancer treatments. Their work is making a difference and saving lives. Takedown Cancer is an all-volunteer organization that pays no salaries. Visit www.takedowncancer.org to start your own fundraiser or to make a donation. Join us as we take down cancer. Remember, no one fights alone.
It's time for the Guillotine Grapevine, a podcast for the land of 10,000 wrestlers. 10,000 wrestlers. Now, here's your host, award-winning wrestling broadcast journalist, Jason Bryant.
Another episode of the Guillotine Grapevine. Jason Bryant here with you, talking to one of Minnesota's finest who has come back to the Midwest. He's now the head wrestling coach at South Dakota State University in Brookings, South Dakota, two-time NCAA champion, four-time Division I All-American, and proud New Jersey native, Damion Hahn. Damion, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks for having me, man.
All right, so first things first, what is it like bracing for this first winter back in this wonderful climate that is the upper Midwest?
So, you know, a lot of people have asked that, like, oh, man, you're going to be able to survive these winters? And, I mean, you know what it's like, you know, on the East Coast. I mean, you know, being up in, you know, central New York for the last 12 years, we don't get the wind like we get out here. But, I mean, it gets cold and we get a ton of freaking snow. So, you know, and so I'm not terribly concerned, to be honest with you. You know, I spent, you know, my college here in Minneapolis, so I got a taste of it. I'm actually kind of looking forward to it, see how bad it can get.
Yeah, because those winds come howling off those Alberta Clippers. That hits you in the that state up north pretty good there, as far as when those Dakota marker battles come. It's like, all right, man, it's cold. We want to Fargo, we come in here. It's it's really a no win when you wrestle that duel.
Yeah, no, it's you're absolutely right.
Now let's just dial this back before we talk about Jackrabbit Wrestling and the upcoming duel with your alma mater, University of Minnesota, on Sunday at the Sports Pavilion at 1 p.m. Excuse me, Maturi Pavilion now. It's no longer just known as the PAV is now Maturi Pavilion. But, you know, you spent time in New York, but you're originally from New Jersey. I remember first seeing you come down to the Virginia duels back in, I want to say, 97 with Lakewood High School. And just your team was not super good. You, however, beat the ever-loving dog crap out of a Virginia State champ named Donnie Bishop from Grundy, and we're like, who is this guy? So, you know, what was it like growing up wrestling in New Jersey in that era?
Well, you're bringing up some memories here. So I think that was the first time that, you know, I don't know if we officially met, but then I came down, I don't know how much longer afterwards, and I remember me, you, and Lapoli were like eating lunch or something like that. I think I was down there for a camp, and so, you know, that's kind of where our friendship, you know, kind of started. And so growing up in New Jersey, I mean, obviously, you know, I would say there's a rich tradition in wrestling. You know, it's one of the only states that has just one class in the state tournament. So there's only one state champion per weight. You know, that's something to be, you know, proud of, because, you know, a lot of states have gone away from that. So, you know, I thought growing up in New Jersey, I mean, great competition, you know, through the youth and the high school ranks. And, you know, I think you hit the nail on the head. My high school team was not very good. I guess that's the best way to put it. And I think my senior year, we probably forfeited 3 or 4 weights. You know, it was a struggle because, you know, my high school was kind of a basketball school, and then, you know, everybody went out for basketball, and whoever didn't make the team, we'd try and snatch up, you know, for the wrestling mat. And, but we had, you know, we had a decent team. You know, we've had some decent tradition coming out of there, and we had the opportunity to go down to Virginia duels. And that's kind of a funny story because, we go down to the Virginia duels, and I think Lapoli was putting it on at the time.
He's always been part of the high school the pairing back in the day. He had a lot of high school ties. He was part of the committee, so to speak. So let's associate the proper credit and blame accordingly.
Gotcha. All right. Well, so he's calling my high school coach, Coach Matson, and he's like, "Hey, I'd love to get you guys down here." And my high school coach was like, "Listen, we're not that good." And I think it was Lapoli, and he was just like, "Yeah, I know, I understand." He's like, we want to get Damion down and wrestle. And he I don't know how many phone calls it took, because my coach was like, "No, there's no way we're coming down." And finally convinced them. And I guess there's a couple divisions, like, a black division, blue division, and all these other divisions. And my coach was like, listen, we'll come down as long as you put us in the lowest division possible, because we're going to forfeit a couple weights. And they were like, yeah, sure, no problem. Well, we get down there, we get weighed in, and I think one of our guys didn't make weight, and we're getting the bracketing done, and they come over like, man, we're sorry. And then my coach was like, what are you talking about? He's like, yeah, we couldn't get you in that low division. We had to put you in like the black division, which is the best division. And my coach was like, what the hell? We're down here. All right, fine. And who are we wrestling? First duel, Grundy, Virginia, like the number one team in the country. And I'm like, my coach is like, are you kidding me? So I think we went out there.
I think they were actually ninth that year, so not quite one, but they were definitely top 10 that year.
Yeah, they were legit. And you're coming from my high school. I mean, they're a powerhouse, and so I think we lost like 70 some odd to 5 or 6. I might be the only guy that won, and I don't know if it was like a tech or a pin or something like that. But I think we got teched or pinned in every single weight class except for mine. So that was,
I think it was 71 to 5. I think it was 71 to 5. It was in that neighborhood.
Yeah, man. That's a freaking beatdown. And, it was not cool. And so, I don't even know. I think we had maybe one more match. I don't even know, but, I remember that clearly. Grundy, Virginia, putting the smackdown on old Lakewood High School. And, it was not good, not good to say the least. But, all in all, it was, it was a good trip for team camaraderie and just, building friendships. And, I think that was the best part about it. And we get home and we get back to, what we were trying to do as a program. And, yeah, man, it wasn't all that bad.
Well, even before that, growing up as a wrestler, you're grouped in different weight classes, and you've always been an upper weight. Despite, some kids grow into it, you've always been an upper weight. And so you weren't always wrestling the super bet. You're getting the kids that are like you're getting me basically. The pudgy kid coming out for wrestling is like, the other guy in the weight class. You got the super guy that knows everything against, I don't know how to hit a switch. How did you try to develop your wrestling skills in that era where, honestly, you probably weren't getting the best level of competition week in, week out. Whereas, if you're at 60 pounds, you're hitting the other hammers. You're at 140 pounds in the fifth grade. You're not seeing everything. I'm not saying you're that big, but you know what I'm saying.
No. I think, for me, wrestling was always fun. And, I think it was fun because I had success early on. I was a big kid in second grade. I mean, I wrestled 100 pounds. I was a bantam heavyweight. And, we weighed around all day long, you'd be at a tournament and you're running around with your friends, playing tag, playing football, and then they call you to the mat around like 5 o'clock in the afternoon when you weighed in at like 7 a.m. And I go out there and I headlock somebody and the match is over. And all of a sudden, hey, we go back to playing football. So I always enjoyed wrestling in general and just being around people. And kind of as I got older and I started to grow a little bit more, and you're kind of right. The competition, I didn't have a lot of it. But what my dad did and, really helped me kind of develop was I wrestled. I mean, when I was a bantam, I'd wrestle, 2 weight classes. I wrestled bantam and midget. And then when I was a midget, I wrestled midget and intermediate and so on. So I was able to get competition, at tournaments. And I remember when I was a midget and, I'd have maybe like 3 guys in my weight, outside me. And then, I'd wrestle, I don't know, 100 and some odd pounds, they would be, a half dozen or a dozen guys in the intermediate weight. So I always got a fair amount of matches, and I think it helped me, bring me along, develop wise. So I did get some competition, and then my dad had a wrestling club, all through when I was growing up, and at one point, I mean, we had one of the most successful wrestling clubs in the state. I think maybe like 4 or 5 or 6 state champs one year came out of my dad's club, and so we didn't have my high school, it didn't have a great training environment per se, but we did have, a handful of, good training partners within the club ranks that I was able to work out with. And we had some coaches that, I was able to train with as I got into high school. And, guys like, Scott Goodale was one of our club coaches. I worked out with him. John Leonardis was a club coach. I worked out with him. So as I got older, I had good training partners. And that, again, it's all about development. And not only was it as good as, a training partner, get in there and wrestle with, but these guys were very knowledgeable. My dad, wrestled 2 years in high school, and I wouldn't say he was the most knowledgeable person. It grew over time, because he was so involved with it. But getting a little outside perspective was good, and bringing some of these college level guys in, to help coach and train, us was super important, and it helped with especially me, being able to develop, my skills and taking me to, a higher level. So I mean, as time progressed, it got better.
One thing about your dad too is a very, very interesting backstory with him. He was also spent a lot of time as a professional wrestler growing up. What was it like trying to wrestle on the weekends? And that history was like, yeah, Dad was a pro wrestler.
That's funny. Because, so many people have heard this story, but that's what I thought wrestling was when I got into it. I thought the only wrestling that, was out there was professional wrestling. And, going to it when I was a little kid and being involved in it, that's all I knew. So when I saw the flyer to go sign up for, rec wrestling, I thought, I was like, man, this is awesome. I was like, I'm going to be jumping off the top ropes, elbowing people, drop kicks. And, boy, was I wrong. It was a very, very, very eye-opening experience. And when we got there, I was just blown away. And I asked my mom, I was like, hey, where's the ring? And where's the ropes? And she said, that's not that kind of wrestling. So I didn't really want to do it, to be honest. And, I was like, this is stupid. Like, I don't want to do this. And my mom said, well, we're here. We're going to sign you up and see how you like it. And right from the get-go, remember now, I was in second grade and I was 100 pounds. So there was nobody in the rec room that was my size. So they would give me the high school 103 pounder, and he would roll around with me because that was the only kid my size. And so, like, right from an early start, I always wrestled with older kids. And, maybe that helped, with the development. And one of my first coaches, worked for my dad, and, he was a state champion out of Jackson, Rivera. And, he helped me, get started. And so, I've always been very fortunate, and I guess blessed to have, good people around me within the sport, and to really kind of mentor me and bring me along. So, yeah, man, it's crazy, and now it's kind of full circle, and now I'm coaching and trying to give back. So it's pretty fascinating.
When you get through the circuit, then you head into high school. That the time leading into high school, now we look at it and we have all these youth tournaments everywhere. What was the hype like for you? I mean, this is in an era where the internet really even wasn't a huge thing, even though there were some early adopters in New Jersey. We'll get to them in a moment. But,
yeah.
You're coming into high school. You end up making the state finals 4 times. You're a 3-time state champ. What was the hype like for you coming into high school compared to what you might see these days with, the best junior high wrestlers? They're identified early. I mean, what was the similarities or the differences like for you?
Well, you talked about the internet, and I can remember getting our first home computer when we were in high school, and it's still it rings in my head, the AOL dial-up, the ringing of the modem. And
what was your first screen name? What was your first AOL screen name?
I didn't have one. My parents wouldn't let me get on the computer. They had the computer. They had their whatever screen name. I don't even know what they were. And so they would have to sign in to let us on the computer. And but I remember, kind of early on, I mean, like you said, to check on results and box scores, you got the newspaper. You went to the grocery store or the gas station and you picked up the newspaper and you would look at the box scores at the end of the week. So, I mean, locally, in New Jersey, I mean, in the area, I mean, I guess people kind of knew a little bit about me, just from wrestling every darn weekend out there. And so I remember coming in, and the tournament that always kicked off the season for us was the Neptune Classic. And I remember going to that, I mean, as a little kid and just watching it and seeing some great wrestlers over the time. And I was super excited that, I'm a freshman. I mean, yeah, I had my goals of wanting to accomplish, things in the state, but it was like, oh my God, Neptune Classic's here. I finally get to wrestle in this tournament. And, there was some, talk or hype or whatever you want to call it around that. And, I went out and I wrestled and it just continued, I guess, to grow over the course of the next 4 years. And, I think, with some of the tournaments out there, like, the Cadet Nationals and Junior Nationals, those were probably around my time the biggest tournaments, and they still are. I mean, some of the biggest tournaments in the country. And I was fortunate enough to be able to wrestle, as a cadet, at Cadet Nationals, and started to again continue the success that I was having. And so, I mean, yeah, I guess you could say that there was some hype coming into high school, but again, it's not like it is today. The social media, the internet. I mean, some of these kids almost live, today like a different life on social media, because everything is magnified 1,000 times, where, I was still able to be a kid and just go about my life and do my business and, have fun. And like, I just feel, today with social media and like I said, the internet, these kids are, just blown up at such a young age. And so it definitely different on that aspect. But, as time went on and high school went on, I started to build a little bit more credentials, and, the hype got bigger, I guess. And it kind of went from there.
Well, you go back in time, 1996. I remember reading a story about, I actually just pulled it up now just to make sure I remember where it was. So 96 state finals, that's your loss. That's it. I mean, then you roll to 3 straight state titles. Did you go back in time and think, like, man, that was my freshman year of the state finals? How much does that still, does it sit with you, or is it just a fun story to tell now? Well, it's a fun story for Sean Scannell, but what about you?
I look back and there are a lot of people out there that says, you don't learn anything from losses. And I beg to differ a little bit. I would say that loss for me kind of changed a lot of things. Now, hey, okay, let's say I didn't lose, and I mean, we're not going to predict, if anything would have changed moving forward in some regard. But I think what it did for me was it humbled me. It really put things into perspective. Because we talked about, you brought up, the hype, going into high school, and my dad was very, how do I say this? He always said, you have an image, and if I ever got out of, if I ever thought I was too big for my britches, he had another thing to say about it. So it always taught me to kind of be humble, and I think with that loss, it even made things, put things in perspective even further. But I took it hard. I did. I remember I tell this story a lot, and coming in that state tournament, I was the 8th. So at that point in time, they switched from they went to a district, region, and then the state tournament, where they threw in a super region. So after the region tournament, you went to a super region, and so that was like the top 3 from 2 regions in each. They would combine, and then that was basically the first round of the state tournament, but they didn't hold it at the venue. So they would hold it at a separate venue all around the state. 2 regions would combine, and then you wrestled those. And then when you went down to the state tournament, there was already 8 in the winner side, 8 in the loser side. So out of the 8 in the winner side, there were 7 seniors, and I was the only freshman. And one of the qualifications to be seeded was previous state experience. Well, I had none, so I got the last seed. And I wrestled a kid by the name of Derek Johnson, who I wrestled in the region finals, and I lost to in like freaking triple overtime or whatever. And I wrestled him first round of the state tournament. I ended up coming back and beating him, and then went all the way to the state finals. And it was crazy. I mean, people were just talking and the hype, and I mean, there were T-shirts and there were signs, and I remember thinking, I don't remember if it was at the tournament when I was warming up or on the way over to the tournament from the hotel, and some guy grabbed me or was talking to me, and he said, "So, you're in the finals?" And I was like, "Yeah." And being, just young, I'm like, "Yeah, I'm in the finals." And he goes, "You're wrestling a senior, Sean Scannell, one of the best in the state." And I was just like, okay, I'm ready. And when I look back on it now, I sit there and I talked to this guy who I did not know, and he said some just generic things, and all of a sudden, it kind of like it hit me, and I'm like, oh my God, like, yeah, this guy is one of the best in the state. He is a senior, and I don't want to say it made me nervous, but it kind of freaked me out a little bit. And I remember going into that match, wrestling like I've never wrestled before, and all I wanted to do, I wish I could find it somewhere, but all I wanted to do was just, I got to get to his legs. I got to get to his legs. And I was taking terrible shots, just trying to get to his legs. I thought so much. I got in on a double leg. I have him up on my shoulder, and I remember thinking, God, don't put him down too hard. You don't want to get hit for a slam. Just put him down easy. And I put him down easy, and he gets away. And I never scored the takedown, and I ended up losing by a point or whatever it was. And it was a close call at the end, but you can't leave it in the ref's hands. And I ended up losing. And after I lost, I took it hard, and I went home, and I was upset. And I remember going into my parents' room, late that night, and I told my dad, I woke my mom and dad up, and I said, "Mom, Dad, I don't know if I want to wrestle anymore." And my dad was like, "What?" And I said, I don't know if I can do this. And my dad was like, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "You don't know, all those people were down there to see me do something, and I disappointed them. And I didn't do what they thought I could do." And I took it hard. And for someone who's 15, 16 years old, and that I disappointed, people that, believed in me. I mean, I didn't know how to handle it. And my dad, he talked me off a ledge, and we went, he said, "Listen, you need to take some time off." And so, I took some time off, and, for the first couple of days, I didn't even want to think about wrestling. I was so ashamed that I let people down. And as time went on, I kind of, got out of that a little bit, kept talking to my parents. And, as things progressed, I was going to get back on the mat and take it slow. And the rest is, kind of history. And, I was able to accomplish some things in high school, and then, moved on to college. So yeah, I think it defined a lot of who I am. Losing in the state finals a little bit humbled me more, and I looked at things a different way, and I was thankful to have that opportunity to go out there and compete. I think maybe today's a little bit different how people look at it, but this is an honor, a privilege to go out there and represent your high school, to represent your college, to represent your country. It's not owed to you. This is a privilege that you have, and I think it's important to remember that.
Moving forward a little bit, you said you'd taken some time off. Next time I see you wrestle is at the Junior Olympics and AAU event down, and it was in Virginia that year. And it was actually the year I started Mat Talk Online, so it was at 97, 98. So we're at Oscar Smith High School in Chesapeake. And this Mid-Atlantic AAU team comes down. And it was like, it was you were on there. I think it was Zach Dahl, Orion. It was basically just a murderer's row of Pennsylvania and New Jersey, just badasses. And it was just like, who the heck? It was just like, okay, we know Damion Hahn. What? It was like, everything was like Tech Fall shutouts. I was like, dude. And then that next summer, I go to Fargo. You're on the Dream Team, so you're back in Virginia again. Let's see, what poor sap did you beat that year at the Dream Team Classic? It might have been. Let's see, because that year that was a massive that dual meet at Lake Taylor. It actually was pretty good. We had a pretty good Virginia team, and then once we got about 145, once a very hungover Oklahoman barely got his win. We're not going to mention who that was. It started to become okay. Here comes Tyrone Lewis. Here comes Justin Potter. Here comes Damion Hahn. Here comes Tommy Rollins. Here. Oh my goodness! It was a bludgeoning. We won one match, dude. One match.
Was it really just one?
Yeah, and Mike Akers beat Jason Powell. That was it. So the only
that's right.
Only one we got was my high school got the win there. That was it.
There you go. That's something to be proud of, bud.
Yeah, I think you beat Justin Johnson. I think that's who it was from North Stafford.
I have no idea.
Yeah. But anyway, so then we go to Fargo, and Fargo you win. So then you're the number one guy, not the number one 189 pounder. You're the number one recruit, arguably being considered as one of the best high school wrestlers of all time in that era. You go back, the arguments go with, is it Freed? Is it Hahn? Now Gable Steveson has thrown his name into that conversation in recent memory. Yeah. And then Minnesota is on the radar. This team had not won a national championship. It had a very abrasive, Army Rangers, a coach named Jay Robinson. So explain why Minnesota became the destination for the number one recruit in the country.
Well, I think some people might have liked me to put me in those rankings. Were you on that? Were you on that ranking committee?
I wasn't there yet.
Because I was decent.
You and I got into an argument one time about this, about where you stood, and this is years later. But you and I it wasn't an argument; it was a discussion because I thought Mako was up there too. Going, come on, Alan Freed maybe, but Mako. It was hilarious. And then those rankings, there's going to be an Intermat article of that, every 5-10 years. But how does the Minnesota story unfold?
So Minnesota, like you said, I was pretty heavily recruited coming out of high school, and there was no, back when I was coming out, so early on, when the recruiting process, I'll give you two little things. So when the recruiting process, I started having to think about colleges. So that started getting into like my junior year. I didn't know a whole lot. Because again, the internet, all this, we had Rutgers in New Jersey, and Rutgers is nowhere near what they are today. But I knew of two programs. I knew of Oklahoma State and Iowa. Those are the only two programs I knew, about with wrestling. And I never went to a college match until I went to college. Again, I was wrestling every single weekend, so I never went to college matches. And Penn State wasn't what they are today. Cornell, oh my God, not even close to what they are in today. So, there wasn't a lot of big time wrestling in my mind as I can remember. And so, again, I knew of two programs, and I remember the first college letter that I got was from University of Minnesota. And it was like a intro letter, questionnaire deal. And, it was the first letter I ever received, and I remember looking at it. It had the Minnesota M, and I see University of Minnesota, and I'm like, why are they sending me a letter? I open it up, and it was wrestling, and I'm like, who? Minnesota? I was like, they have wrestling? Like, I had no idea. I was so naive and young. I literally had no idea the University of Minnesota had wrestling. And I'm like, well, I'm not going there. So, and then you got 3 years later, where they're able to start, calling and communicating, and I start to build a relationship with their coaches, and you start taking official visits, and I took all my 5 visits and then some, and when it came down to for me, it was Minnesota and Oklahoma State. And when I look back, I'd like to say that, this was my decision. I had full control over the situation, and I was going to make this decision. And it makes me laugh now looking back because, my parents, your parents, they will always, even today, parents always have their kids' best interest at heart. And as much as I want to say I chose the University of Minnesota, which I did solely by myself, no. I look back and I'm like, God, my parents, they Jedi mind tricked me. I think they steered me in that direction. It wasn't easy because I remember every trip I came back from, I said, oh, my God, that place is awesome. I'm going to go there. And then my mom and dad sat me down and they said, well, this place doesn't have this, but that place does. And I go on the next trip and I'd be like, oh, this place is amazing. I'm coming here. And then they did the same thing. Well, look what the other place had that this place does. And I'm like, well, you just said the other place was no good. And my parents, oh, we never said that. They always made me sit and process everything. And, in regard to choosing the University of Minnesota, every one of their coaches, the guys on the team, I mean, literally just from day one, just took me in and, it felt like family. And that was important to me because my family has always been involved with everything that I've done, in the sport of wrestling. And so I wanted a situation where, I was one of the guys. I was one of their own. And, Jay, Jay Robinson, absolute, amazing mentor that I had, in college. He was that father-like figure, and very, very, very similar, I would say, to my dad, and that kind of that military mindset, and just he says jump, you say how high, and I've been able to have many conversations with Jay, my time there over the years, and just being able to talk to him on a different level. Really helped me grow as a person. And then you have Marty Morgan, who was, literally, I mean, not only my coach, but a training partner, a friend. I mean, you name it. He was my everything, at that time. And, he a lot of the success, that I had, I mean, I credit to him because, he was always there, and, he went through it with me. And, I also had, Joe Russell. Joe Russell was there on staff. And I mean, I don't think you could talk to a human being on the face of this earth that has one bad thing to say about that man, because he's amazing, absolutely amazing. And I credit a lot of my, the academic success that I had later in my college career to Joe. And he helped me. I mean, helped me focus and prioritize and put things into perspective. And then, I have Mark Schwab, absolutely an amazing mind, a philosopher, if you will. And, there are times throughout, I don't care if you're the number one recruit in the country or the last recruit. I mean, everyone struggles, it is what it is. And you struggle to, whether it be socially, academically, athletically. I mean, there are points where it happens. And, I can sit down with with Mark, and after a 5-minute or an hour-long conversation, you think you can go conquer the world. And so he helped me tremendously from a mindset standpoint that I don't know if I would have got anywhere else. So choosing the University of Minnesota, I wanted a program that I never had the success as a team in high school, but I wanted that in college. And, I think at that time they took third, they took second a couple times before I got there. And they were on the verge of doing something great. And it sold me. It did. And every one of those guys on that team, they were genuine. They were good people. Again, they took me in. I couldn't be thankful enough for them and the transition and the process. And ultimately, it was the University of Minnesota for me because of all those factors. And, if I had to do it all over again, I'd probably make the same choice because I know those guys and what they brought to the table, and we wanted to do something great. They were on the verge of doing something. I go and a couple other recruits go, and we did something special. We did something special my redshirt freshman year, and as great as it is to, go out and, do something, accomplish something individually, but when you can do it with, basically your brothers, when you can do it with your brothers, there's nothing greater. And, I will have that to remember always. So.
Want to jump ahead to when you get on campus. You redshirted, and then you're thrown into the lineup in the 2000-2001 season. During that redshirt year, there were a couple things that were interesting. At least I want to get a perspective on. One was this behemoth named Brock Lesnar, and two, your match with Cael Sanderson. Let's just start with Brock. What were your first impressions of that guy?
So I met Brock. He came second semester. So I was recruited. And so when I was on campus, I didn't meet him. He came second semester. But that year, the NCAA championships were in State College, and it was 99. And I went out to the NCAA championships, first NCAA championships I've ever been to. And I go and, I get to, see a lot of the Minnesota people and, talk to some of the guys on the team. And that was the first time I met Brock. Oh my goodness. Like, I don't know how tall he is, 6'4", at the time. He had, he was like 265, 270 pounds, built like an absolute brick house. I thought people that looked like him were just in, comic books. And I meet him for the first time, shake his hand, and his hands are massive. And I'm not a small guy. I'm wrestling, anywhere from 89 to 215. And he just towered me. And I was just so impressed with the sheer size of this guy. And, as I got to talk to him, he is, he's a great guy. And, he's genuine. He's caring. And then, we had a great conversation, and I just remember just seeing this massive human being and just getting, having my own thoughts of what's he going to be like. And then just meeting him and totally, flipping what I thought. And then I go on to college, and he was a senior at my redshirt year. And so I got a chance to kind of roll around with him and work out with him. And I remember Marty, I was pretty quick as a big guy. And so, Marty would make me go with Brock, to help work on Brock's footwork, and we'd wrestle. And Marty used to say, all right, Brock, if he gets to your legs, I'm stopping it. That's a takedown. And so I'd get to Brock's legs, and Brock would get mad, and I'm sitting there like, oh God, there goes my life, So, but again, just an awesome guy, just a good human being, and it was nice to be on a team with him, watch him win his first national title, and sitting in the stands and saying, God, man, I want to do that. I want to be there. And, then you fast forward, to my freshman year, and, coming in, I basically, Brandon Eggum was a senior my redshirt year, and I filled in for him my freshman year, and we had a pretty solid group of guys, cast of characters, and obviously we ended up having success. Having 10 All-Americans, which is absolutely phenomenal. And again, that's probably and I'm not just saying this. That is probably one of the greatest memories, experiences that I will ever have in the sport of wrestling. And it goes back to, because I did it with my family, and then it was amazing.
And that year, the year you get thrust in the lineup, that's also very different. I mean, you're the 5 seed, so you've taken a couple losses during the season. You wrestle, always comes full circle. You wrestle a guy from Grundy in the first round of the NCAA championships, guy named Scott Justice. He knocks you off. Then you come back through, and who do you beat on your way back but Sean Scannell, the guy you lost to in the state finals as a freshman? When that happens, I mean, let's just talk about when you get upset and then you drop down and then you find out you've got to wrestle Scannell, who's now wrestling at Rider, which is one of the colleges in New Jersey at wrestling. So do you remember that moment when you find out it's going to be this guy in the consolations?
Yeah. So, pretty interesting. So, the question you had before about, I wrestled Kale as a redshirt freshman. So that was the only time I was able to, I ever wrestled Kale. And we've been in a couple of tournaments, same tournaments that, obviously he didn't lose, I lost, and never got another chance to wrestle him. But going into the national tournament, it was, the 5th seed or whatever it is, and I got a guy from he wrestled Virginia Tech, and then
in that era, you draw Virginia Tech first round. In that era, you're like, all right, cool. Who we got next?
Exactly, right. And so the night before the tournament, so the 5th seed, I'm in the top bracket, and I'm like, okay, great. I'm going to get another shot at wrestling Cale Sanderson. And, maybe I'm thinking ahead or whatever it is. But I remember the night before the tournament, I'm sitting down with Leroy Vega. I think we might've been roommates, and me and Leroy are sitting there, or there was a bunch of guys. And I go, what's the maximum amount of matches you could have at this tournament? And Leroy looks at me and goes, you lose first round, you're going to have 8 matches, to be an All-American. And I'm like, well, hell, I ain't losing first round. Well, sure enough, I go out there and I lose first round. Again, you learn from your experiences, and you could say, a loss, you can learn from losses. I remember being so freaking excited. My first national tournament. I think I took 3rd in the Big Ten that year. I'm fired up. I'm the 5th seed. I got another chance to wrestle, hopefully wrestle Kale. And so I remember before my first match, I'm like, I got a guy from Virginia Tech. I got to get a great warm up in. And I remember going down in the Iowa wrestling room, and I had Brandon, and I'm sitting there, and we're drilling, and we're kind of going at it. I'm like, I want to be ready. I want to be prepared. Well, by the time I got done, it seemed like at the time not a whole lot of time, but looking back, I'm sitting there saying like, oh my God, I might have been down there for like an hour. It was a workout, and I think the little joke is, it's a warm up, not a wear down. And I go out there and I wrestle Scott Justice from Virginia Tech. And I swear to you, my feet were like in cement blocks. I could not move. Now, I know, I trained all year. I wrestled in big matches my entire life. And I swear this never happened. So the only thing I can chalk it up to, two maybe things is did I over warm up? Did I expend everything, or were they nerves? Because I was great on my feet. That was my best position, and I literally couldn't move. And so it had to be one of the two things. And I end up losing. I don't know, maybe by 2 or something like that, 6-4. And I remember, because you only have one round that first day or that first session. We do the one round. I remember going back to the hotel. My parents come on over to check on me, and I'm talking to them, talking to my coaches, and they're like, all right, you got to get back on the horse. You got to get ready. Your team needs you. And I'm like, all right, who do I got to wrestle? And they're like, Sean Scannell. And I'm like, no way. Literally, that was my second match after I lost. I lost my first one. That was my second match. And he was a returning All-American. He got upset. And I got to wrestle him first match on the backside. And you talk about being in the dumps after you lose, and an opportunity to wrestle someone that you never got to, wrestle after he beat you. And, oh, man, it couldn't have happened at a better time, because it got me excited again. I was just like, all right, I got to do this. This is probably the absolute last chance that I'll ever have to wrestle this guy again. And went out there, and I did pretty good. I think I ended up majoring him, and that kind of jump started the long road of wrestlebacks to become an All-American as a freshman. So, yeah, man, I don't know if it just fell into place or, but it definitely, knowing that I had to wrestle him on the backside, the next match definitely got me fired up and out of that little, feeling sorry for yourself after you take a loss. And I was excited. So it definitely helped me.
You had talked about in high school that you had been, the guy, but your teams were never very good. When that season ends, the history is made, the 10 All-Americans, the first team championship in school history, things that you said you want to be a part of, a team championship. What was it like for you to go through an experience where you weren't on the top of the podium yourself, but your team was for the first time in your life?
It was amazing. It was. I mean, I can't say that enough. I mean, absolutely amazing to do something that, one, in school history has never been done. Two, something that has never been done in NCAA history was, again, amazing. And even the cooler thing was, we didn't have a finalist. Not one person was in the finals. We did it, through the backside. We had a handful of guys in the semifinals that lost, but we all had to come through the backside to, win our team a national title. You piggyback that on top of doing it in Iowa, in Carver Hawkeye Arena. Oh man, how cool is that? A place that Jay Robinson coached with Dan Gable and won, countless national titles. I mean, that's, again, amazing. And so, I mean, it is a special thing that we were able to accomplish. I did it with a group of men that I will have the utmost respect for, forever. We will always have that thing that binds us together. But it was a true testament to teamwork. And that's what I went to Minnesota for. That was it. I went to Minnesota because, they were on the verge of doing something. And I believed what their vision was and what they wanted to accomplish. If you would have asked me, a senior in high school, I was young, and I would have told you, heck, I would have won I was going to be a 4-time national champ, whether it was at Minnesota or, Ocean County Community College. I was going to win 4 titles. It didn't matter where I was going to win. But you got to be selective if you want things that are out of your control, and that was a team. That was not within my control of what was happening, and they started something great, and I wanted to be part of that team and contribute to that. Everybody has their reasons for picking the schools that they go to. It could be coaching, it could be training partners. I think I honestly believe one of the last things that people think about is that team aspect. And when you have a group of guys all focused on the same goal, that's huge, and that's what we had, and that's why we did what we did.
2002 in Albany, which was my first national championships that I attended. wackiness at the weight class says there's that name again, Scott Justice. Only this year, he's the number 1 seed. He had beaten you during the early part of the season in a dual meet out at Virginia Tech. And then you go through the season, solid number 2. And then you get to the semifinals. Josh Lambrick, who is, for him, he's not known for beating you in the semis. It's for him, he goes on the other side of history 1 round later with the loss to Rob Roan. But, 184, let's look at this weight class. Was this the start where you really realized that maybe this weight cut might be just a little too much for me?
Yeah. My sophomore year was arguably, just by record, one of the worst years that I had in my college career. I think I ended up with like 11 losses. And it was tough. If you look at my national tournament, I was winning matches by a point, a couple points here and there. I ended up losing to, my kryptonite, Scott Justice of Virginia Tech, ended up losing to him, the beginning of the season, and then he went undefeated all year, so he gets the top seed. That year there was a lot for me, a lot of things going on in my life. My father, probably being the biggest thing, he was going through some medical things that, I went home for, came back. And, so I had a lot of things going on in my life outside of wrestling, that really took a toll, and the weight cut just started to get, I don't want to say, hard, but it started to take a toll on me, my body, physically and mentally. I didn't have a problem making weight, at the end of the year. My weight was good. It just, I didn't have anything left in the tank. And I remember, going out there, the number 2 seed, Scott Justice gets upset right away. And I'm kind of fighting through the bottom part of the bracket. I make the semifinals, and I got this guy that, he had a great tournament. It stinks what happened to him in the finals because he was dominating, but I didn't really know who he was. And I'm like, okay, I got this guy from Oklahoma. And I remember before the match, Marty grabbing me and saying, hey, listen, he's good on top. On his feet, he's decent. He goes, you cannot relax by the edge. If you relax by the edge, that's where he's going to shoot. And I'm like, okay, got it. So we go out there, and I get like 2 takedowns, and I'm going to say in the first minute of the match. I take him down, I cut him, I take him down again, I cut him, and I'm like, oh my God, this is what it's about. I'm feeling that fire, and sure enough, I'm going to say, I play it back in my mind. I relaxed, maybe on the edge, and he got a takedown, and then he proceeded to slap a saddle on my back and ride the dog snot out of me. And I was just like, oh my God, I've never been, I think that's one of the only matches in my college career where I've given up, that kind of riding time. And I just remember he was tight waisting me and trying to tilt me. And I'm pretty good on bottom. I can get away. And every time I got to my base, I remember him deep waist trying to run me over, trying to tilt me. And I was literally scared. If I didn't belly out, I was going to get tilted. And I'm like, oh my God. I get up to my base. He go to tilt me. I belly right out. And I'm like, I can't move or I'm going over. It was so impressive. How good he was, that tournament with turning guys. And I ended up losing, I'm going to say by maybe 1 or 2 points.
Well, it's also, let's remind people, he did tech Andy Rovat the round before that.
Yeah.
And it was top work.
Oh, yeah. I'm telling you, man, his top game, I don't want to say it doesn't get the credit it deserves. It was freaking good. Unbelievable. I've never been in a match in all of my career when a guy got on top of me, oh my God, I might get turned. Seriously, that's how good Josh Lambrick was that tournament on top. And I ended up losing, and I was just like, God, it was just like, again, another year that, I ended up losing, and I'm not going to accomplish my goal. It stinks. It does. And then I had my two roommates, Jared Lawrence and Luke Becker, my two roommates make the finals. And so I remember wrestling Saturday morning and trying to come back to see, to see if I can get, third. And I ended up taking fifth again. And I sat there that evening and watched my two roommates wrestle in the national finals and win. And I was just like, God, like that has to be me. I mean, it was a goal. It just drove me, and I wanted to do it with them. And that's kind of how that year wound up. And, you talked about the weight, and I started off my junior year. I was out for the first part of the season with a torn ACL. Came back, first match.
How'd you tear the ACL?
I don't know if I tore it at the end of the season. I actually tore it doing sprints. I didn't tear it wrestling. I tore it doing sprints. And, you've been in the Minnesota room where you're running down and they have the padded walls. And so you would kind of sprint down and kick off the wall and turn back. Well, I went to go kick off the wall just a little too far, and it like hyperextended. And I remember it happened, and I turned and I went down. And I'm like, oh my God, that hurt. And I was like, something happened. I don't know what. So I gave it a couple of days or whatever, and I was back wrestling. I wrestled all spring. I wrestled all summer, and I was just going to keep wrestling. And I woke up one morning in the end of August before I had to go back to school, and literally my ankle was the size of my calf. And my mom's like, oh my God, what's going on? And I said, I don't know. So she's like, when you get back, you need to get it checked out. So I went back and I got my ankle checked out, and everything was fine. And our team doctor was like, did you ever hurt your knee? I said, yeah, back in like March, April time frame. I said, but it's fine. And he's like, well, let's get it checked out. They do an MRI, and it's like, you got torn ACL. And I was like, okay, why is my ankle this big? And he's like, because I also, like, over time, like, I guess I tore the bursa sac and it started to drain. So, and then it just happened to do it, right around August, September time frame. So they're like, listen, we can get you in for surgery and we can get you back, second semester. And, everybody was like, okay, I guess this is what we do, let's do it. Came back at 184. And I don't know if I think I was ranked like, I don't know, 1, 2, 3. I don't know. I was top 5, beginning of my junior year at 184. And they get me back for the first, I think it was January 1st. My first duel, wrestling Oklahoma State, and I'm wrestling Jake Rushel. And I'm like, all right, he's a freshman, no big deal. I'm a junior, you're fine. You're training, your knee's good. Just go out there and compete. And my first time down to weight, and I wrestled awesome for about 30 seconds. And let me tell you, not good. So my wife, who was then my girlfriend, this is the first college match she's ever gone to. And she's sitting there. She's like, she's talking to the girlfriends. She's like, what's going on? She's like, he's just laying there. Like, can he not get up? Like, literally, I'm not playing. I wrestled awesome for 30 seconds. And then I was spent. I had no energy. After that duel, I went to my coaches, and I ended up losing like 6-1 or whatever. I go to my coaches after that duel, and I said, listen, we need to talk. I need to think about going up to 97. And Jay and Marty, they said, let's get through the weekend. We were leaving like the next day to go to Arizona and like Nebraska. And he's like, get through the weekend, and then we'll talk about it, after the weekend. So, I manned up, and I wrestled the next two matches at 184. I think I won both of them in like overtime or something like that. We get back, and Marty was all for it. I mean, he was, he was one of my, my coach, my training partner, my greatest advocate. And when he talked to Jay, and Jay was hesitant at first. Jay was like, no, he's not big enough. He's not big enough to go 97. And Marty was just like, Jay, listen, I've wrestled the kid. I wrestled him when he's 200 pounds, and when he's 185 pounds, he goes, it's night and day. And so convinced Jay to do it. I had to wrestle off for the spot, and then I went in the wrestle off, and I wrestled my first weekend. That's when National Duels was in January, and I wrestled National Duels. I end up wrestling 97, and I actually lose a match. Who did I lose to? Was it Fichetti maybe? I think I lost to Fichetti, guy that I, never lost to. He's a Jersey guy. We wrestled, growing up and everything, and I ended up losing to him. Picked up a couple wins, lost to him, and from there on, it was just, keep getting bigger, keep getting stronger. I didn't really have a problem getting bigger, but just keep getting stronger. And the move for me going up a weight class helped my wrestling, because now I remember walking into practice saying, okay, how much weight can I lose today? That was my number one focus. And I didn't care about anything else. And when I went up weight class, I went into practice saying, okay, these are the things I'm working on. These are the things that I'm going to get better at and getting good workouts. It was completely a different mindset, and went up to 97, ended up, winning Big Tens and, winning a national title. And so, great move with Marty, helped advocate for me to go up 97, and it worked out. So it was it was a crazy year, but in the end, it all came together.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time talking about the Gopher career here, but the match against John Trench in the finals, that's the one where the quote is attributed to you in Kansas City. If there's time on the clock, there's time to wrestle. One, did you actually say that? Where did that exactly come from?
Okay, so, yesterday was Thanksgiving. We had the guys over, the guys on the team over. My wife cooks a big Thanksgiving, dinner. And it's funny, that quote got brought up. If there's time on the clock, there's time to wrestle. And I'm just sitting there like, yeah, nice quote, Captain Obvious. Like, obviously, there's time on the clock, literally we're right in it happened in the press conference, and it wasn't planned. I don't know. It just came right off the cuff, and they were saying, they asked me, 11 seconds left in the match. What's running through your mind? What are you thinking? I'm like, well, hell, if there's time on the clock, there's time to wrestle. And it kind of stuck. And, that match, again, another guy that kind of grew up wrestling, John, and, I tell people, when people talk about some parts of my career, I said, I've been very lucky, and I thank John, for one thing that he did in that match. It was third period, and we were wrestling, and I think I'm kind of going after him. I hit a shot towards the edge. His back is on the edge, and I tried like a duck under or something, and he kind of spins me. Now I'm out of bounds, and I'm on the ground, and he's standing up, and I'm out of bounds. He's inbounds, and instead of just walking back to the center, he pushes me out of bounds to stop the clock at 11 seconds. And he gave me another chance. He could have literally ran back to the center or walked back to the center, probably took another 4 or 5 seconds. I would have had to get up off the ground, go after him, and that would have been probably the match. And so I was lucky. He pushed me out of bounds, stopped the clock at 11, and I remember looking over, at my corner, and Marty's, yelling and screaming, and again, if there's time on the clock, there's time to wrestle. And I got back up there. I was like, all right, here we go. This is it. You got to put something together. You got to string something together right now. And I did. I got lucky, and I ended up getting the takedown and riding him out of bounds and winning the match. So that's that's where that kind of quote came from. And like I said, just off the cuff.
Was he the best guy you ever beat?
the best guy I ever beat. That's kind of a hard. That's a hard one. He's definitely up there. You got guys like Mo Lawal. Mo Lawal was a hammer. You got some pretty good guys. I beat Rovad a handful of times, who ended up being an Olympian. He definitely one of the top guys. The best ever. I don't know. It's that's a hard one to say.
Maybe that's for another episode. You finish your career with a second title. You beat a guy from Iowa in the finals, which is always good if you're a Gopher. And it was a 10 seed. It was one of those things that in looking at all four of your tournaments, it's like, okay, Wyoming, okay, got an Oklahoma State win there. Okay, you got a guy from Pitt, Ryan Bader in the semis. That win probably looks better now because of his success in MMA. And then, Ryan Fulsis from Iowa. It was really kind of like Hans, this is his to win. He's the one seed. It was like almost, I don't want to say it was assured, but it really didn't look like you were really pressured a whole lot, save that 2-1 in the semis with Bader.
Yeah. Yeah, that one, that 2-1 in the semifinals, as my career got longer, I for some reason, I got a little bit more conservative, and, I started wrestling conservative. And I ended up winning 2-1 in the finals. I got a takedown in the first. I rode him out, I think, in the second. And then the third, he chose top. Something happened because I remember I chose. God, I don't even remember. But
now here's the thing. It's so fresh in your memory, but it was still, dude, this was 15 years ago at this point. It's crazy to think about.
I know. Crazy. So I ended up, he actually chose top. And because, that was, a style matchup for us, that was his best position for, when he wrestled me. So he takes top. And I remember getting so frustrated because he kept hooking my back ankle, and I could, it's crazy. They still do it today. And let me sit on your ankle and see if you can get away. It's tough. And, I can't believe that's not being called for stalling. And so he did it. He sat on my ankle, and I'm trying to stand up. I can't get away. I'm kicking. He's trying to hold me down, and I ended up getting ridden out. It took away all the riding time that I accrued, going into the third period. And I ended up winning 2-1, and I was so frustrated with that situation, that match. But hey, he wrestled in his best position. Ended up, riding me. He was trying to work for a turn, but I just kept moving. And I ultimately did not get out, which is, upsetting to me because, I stressed to our guys that being ridden is for me, like, totally unacceptable. And, I got ridden. So shame on me. Do what's the old saying? Do as I say, not as I did. But yeah, 2-1 in the semifinals, and then I thought for sure I was gonna have to wrestle Sean Stender in the finals, and he gets upset by Fulsis of Iowa, and he had a great tournament. I think that year I might have wrestled Fulsis like 6 or 7 times. I don't even know. But he had a great tournament, beats Stender in the semifinals, and there you go, another Minnesota-Iowa showdown in the NCAA finals. So it was, it was a good tournament.
What about the dental surgery that took place on the mat there?
Well, yeah. So that was third period.
How much did that hurt, by the way?
So I didn't really know. Like I know so third period on our feet, I fake hard, and he sprawls, and he hits me in the top of the head. I stand up, I try for a go behind, and we go out of bounds, and he stands up, and he's just like, stop. He's holding his mouth. I didn't really realize that I got hit. that I got split open, and he's saying his mouth, and then I kind of just reach up and touch my head, and I pull my hand down, and I'm like, oh my God, there's blood everywhere. And so I'm thinking, is it him? He's bleeding. And I put my hand up again, and I can feel the gash, and I'm like, oh my God. And there's just blood everywhere. So, and everybody, because he took injury time, so everybody was focused on him. They weren't focused on me. And then I finally go over to my side, and, they're like, oh boy, they're trying to wrap it up, tape it up, trying to keep it on. And it got to a point where then the ref really realized, okay, he's bleeding. So Fulsos gets to the center, and he's ready to go. Well, they're still trying to, close this thing up. And it goes, I don't know how long. It got to a point where I just said, listen, just throw some Vaseline in it. I mean, like, just do something just so it stops bleeding, so the blood just doesn't drip out. I was like, you're not going to be able to wrap anything on me. And they finally just goop it up, and we go out there. I get another takedown. We go out of bounds, and it's just running down the back of my head. And they stop it again, and they go back over, and they're trying to, do what they're doing to stop it. But yeah, so your adrenaline's running, everything's, running 100 miles an hour. And so it didn't really hurt. Let me tell you, that night, oh my goodness. We had our social, we had, everybody has their talk, their speeches, and we got done. And I said, I just want to go to bed. My head hurts so bad right now. It was just throbbing. And because right after the match, they bring me in the back. I got our team doctor. They clean it up. They staple it together to close it up. And when everything kind of calmed down, it hurt like no other. So I needed to go to bed early. So.
Yeah, I mean, the joke is like his tooth was lodged in your head. I mean, definitely, I'm sure he didn't feel very good in the morning either. I mean, having his face smashed in and losing in the national finals. You at least got the gold medal out of that one.
Yeah, I did. I don't know. I don't know how his mouth felt the next day, but at one point you can hear, I guess maybe on the video, you can hear him say his teeth got pressed back. And he bit through his mouthpiece. So, yeah, there was some force coming down, and it definitely left a mark. I got a nice little scar to prove it.
Yeah, well, one that's a little more visible these days is as we get older. Now,
come on, man.
Hey, I'm right there with you too, man. I'm wearing hats like it's going out of style here. I mean, I'm sitting here looking at my hair, going, I got maybe 3-4 more good years left. But moving forward, because if I bick my head, I'm afraid it's not going to come back. So I'm leaving it, and until it gets really bad, till I'm like, just let it go, man. But as we move forward now, and I'm going to see if we can. We're not going to truncate the Cornell years because that was a good 12 years of your life. But to connect the dots from leaving Minnesota, then coming back to the area into South Dakota State, you spent a lot of time with Rob Koll at Cornell. You coached a lot of big guy All-Americans and national champs, guys like Bosak, guys like Simaz, guys that really helped elevate Cornell's program. You got to know the ins and outs of how Rob Koll's brain works and recruiting with no scholarships and doing things that, out the big, you're working in an environment that the Big Ten schools are really unfamiliar with. Like when Joe Russell left, he goes to George Mason. He goes, wait, I got to answer my own phone now? So, not everybody in the Big Ten lives the same like the rest of the world. So, how would you explain or sum up your experience with Koll at Cornell and how it kind of maybe kind of created that real desire to be a coach and a head coach someday and what you really learned out of it to compare your experiences with what you learned from Marty and Jay?
It definitely different because, you're talking about an Ivy League institution, and you kind of hit all the things on the head, with, no scholarships and stuff like that. So, I came in, to Cornell kind of, just like, I don't want to say rip roaring, but this is the way we got to do it. And, Rob kind of sat me down and was like, listen, man, we can't really approach it that way because because we had other factors that we had to deal with, and so after sitting down with Rob and really coming up with a game plan, how are we going to train these guys? How are we going to develop them? Because Cornell got some decent recruits over the years, but we never it wasn't until later on where we started getting some top level recruits. So we really needed to develop them, and I think just from a wrestling mindset, Rob Koll, I it's no secret. I tell people all the time, he might be one of the greatest wrestling minds, wrestling people in our sport today, because it's all encompassing. It's not just, hey, we're going to go into the room, we're going to teach some moves, we're going to run practice, I'm done. No, it's an operation. It's a business. It's so many things. He's a CEO, and my time spent with him. I cannot put a price tag on the knowledge that man has, how much he has helped me grow as a coach. And I thank him a great deal for what I'm doing today. So I still bring a lot of the Minnesota things that I've learned, but I was only an athlete there. I was never really a coach. So the training stuff, that kind of mentality, mindset, but the coaching, the coaching and the running the program and all that, I got to give it to Rob. He's a master at what he does. And again, like I said, an hour ago in our conversation, I said, I've been very fortunate and blessed to be around good people who, phenomenal mentors. And I've been fortunate. I really have been. And Rob is right up there, with probably one of the top. So everything that I've been able to do as a coach, the things that I've learned and some of the training and recruiting, and it goes to Rob. I got to give it to him.
I do also remember one time too. Rob has the gift of gab when it comes to arguing or trying to make a point. We're in line at I think his son was wrestling what was then Fila Juniors, and we're in Akron, and I walk up to you and Rob, and we just start chatting, and it was a New Way USA Wrestling discussion or something like that. And then about 5 minutes after this conversation starts, you're like, all right, I'm going to go over here. And you walk away. Hour later, we're still standing there. You come back, we're still, and he's like, I'm going to, and you just turn around and walk away. It was just like, man, I just, So, the gift of gab with Rob Koll.
Yeah. So, and Rob will tell you, he's never wrong. And, the world will be a better place when people understand that. And so I am somewhat the same way. And so me and Rob, we would, God, it could be the dumbest conversation, and we will go back and forth and back and forth. And I'm not backing down because I'm not wrong, Rob, and he thinks he's not wrong. And so, we would just go tit for tat, and it just wouldn't stop. And a half hour, 45-minute sauna would turn into an hour and a half. And it's just no, I'm not getting out of here. You get out of here, you lose. You lost the conversation. And so it would, you talk about the gift of gab. Yes, he does. He's very knowledgeable on a lot of different things and subjects and topics. And so, man, he's a good dude.
Circling back to the Minnesota thing for a minute. When I first moved out here 10 years ago, I was talking with Joe Russell. He was showing me around the facilities when he was still here. And he goes, oh yeah, there's Damien's sister down there. She was working out in the weight room, and your sister Deanne came out and was on the track team here. What did it mean to have your sister come out here to Minnesota as well?
I don't know if it was, say, what did it mean? For me, it was, I loved my experience at Minnesota. I knew the type of people that she was going to be around. And, at this time, my father passed away, and I'm going to say it was like the mid 2000s, and my father passed away probably a couple of years prior to when Deanne went off to college, and I wanted her to be surrounded by, good people. And I just knew of my time in Minnesota, and I just knew I had such a connection there that if I couldn't be there for her, I knew she was going to be looked after. And so I guess, it was important to me. It was important to me, and having some familiarity with Minnesota and the people there that I trusted. I trusted them to, look after her, because I couldn't at that time. And, she ends up, choosing University of Minnesota over some other very good programs. And, she had a good career herself. I mean, she was the Big Ten champ, and, she did some great things, so I ultimately, very happy, very pleased, and, with her decision and going to Minnesota and kind of carrying on a little bit of tradition, the family name there. And, so no, it was all good.
We sat down a couple years ago at the U.S. Open, and we were talking about, the Minnesota job wasn't yet open, but there were a lot of D1 openings, and it was one of those things where, your name was thrown around a lot. Pendleton's name was thrown around a lot. Basically, any high-level successful assistant coach, Mark Perry, I don't know how many different times, but, the opportunity comes up and it's like, this guy would be a great coach. And we had talked, and it's like, you were happy at Cornell, and you were really only kind of considering the only place you would really leave for was Minnesota. And what changed, and why did South Dakota State become that place that's, this is where I finally become a head coach?
That's a good question. So
at the time, again, it was off the record. We've since broken that record, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I didn't think I would leave Cornell. 12 years. Not only did I work for the university, my wife was a director in alumni affairs and development. She had a great job. Our kids were, entrenched in the community, into, the schools. And we laid down roots. And I didn't think I was leaving. And, I've gotten some calls, in previous years, different programs. And, I just, it always came back to Cornell. Cornell had everything that we wanted and what we needed. We were happy. And I think that was the biggest thing. And then, South Dakota State called, and I'll be honest with you, I didn't, I from the first, not the first conversation, but I got an email early on, and from a man connected a little bit to the program, and said, "Hey, as we're looking for a new head coach, and would you be interested?" And at the end of the email, he says, "I knew your parents, and, tell your mother hello," and so on and so on. And I'm sitting there like, I'm talking to my wife, I'm like, South Dakota? Like, I never stepped foot in the state of South Dakota. And, I'm like, South Dakota? I was like, no, I'm not interested in South Dakota. And I was like, I'm just, I'm not going to respond. It wasn't from an official university capacity. And my wife was like, he knew your parents. You have to write him back. And I was like, okay. So I write him back, and, I said, listen, I don't know a whole lot. I'm going to be honest with you about South Dakota. But tell me what you know. And he starts, we sent a couple of emails back and forth, and he said that, Justin is out of town and he will be in contact with you next week. Well, I was down in Florida visiting some family, and I took my kids to Disney for the first time. And so this was all happening while we were down there. This was all happening while, I was down there, and we get back, and, Justin's cell calls. And again, I was very honest with Justin. I said, Justin, I I'm kind of naive a little bit in this sense. I said, I don't know a whole lot about South Dakota, let alone South Dakota State, the university. I said, you don't tell me. And the more I talked to Justin, I think the conversation was like 40, 45 minutes, and it just kept going and going and going, and it flowed. And I got done with the conversation, and I mean, I had so many questions that I wanted answered, and he hit the nail on the head over and over and over. And I hung up the phone. My wife comes in the room, and she's like, so how'd that go? I look at her and I go, that guy is awesome. And she kind of laughs. She's like, well, what do you mean? I go, oh my God. You know, I tell people you can win at a lot of places despite your administration. But when you have the support of them, what can't you do? So I sat there and I started to kind of make a list of things. And I go back to Cornell and I say, why have we been able to be so successful at a place like Cornell, an Ivy League school, no scholarships, you know, being, you know, when you think of Ivy League schools, I mean, especially on the East Coast, you think of, you know, metropolitan areas. Cornell is not in a metropolitan area. I mean, you're in upstate New York, secluded by dairy farms and state parks, not a very big populated area.
Don't forget the gorges.
Oh yeah. I mean, gorges everywhere. You know, I'm putting these things together, and I say, why have we been able to do this? It's not just because, you know, Rob Koll, you know, is a great coach and, you know, he brings in great people. I mean, you look at over the course of his time there, he's had some pretty big names come through that program. And I take it back one second. He is a good coach, but it's not the only reason. And the number one reason that I kept coming back to is a guy by the name of Andy Noel. Andy Noel is the athletic director at Cornell University, and if it was not for him, I do not believe Cornell would have had the success that they have had over the course of, you know, Andy's tenure there. And I'm sitting there, and the enthusiasm that Andy has, the vision, the excitement. I talked to Justin Sell, and it was like speaking to Andy Noel. And I was just like, oh my God, like this guy, he's got it. He's got it together. He knows what he wants. The vision is there. The support is there. I mean, the more I talked to him, I was just like, I couldn't get it out of my head. And he kept telling me, you know, he said, Damion, I just got to get you out here. I got to get you out here. You got to see what we have done. You know, you got to see the campus, see the community. And I said, okay. And I think it was like a week. It was right around like Easter, right around Easter, you know, that time frame, and we get through the weekend, and we finally get things organized, and I fly out. And again, I did not know what to expect. And when I got here, I was blown away by the campus, the community, the town, the support, and the vision of their athletics program. You look at in the last 5 years, they have put over $100 million into their athletics facilities in the last 5 years. You look at, we just finished a $12 million basketball practice facility. Brand new wrestling facility is on the docket. I mean, like, there are so many things that are happening here at a university that only has, 12,000 students. And so it was very, very fascinating to me, very familiar, because Cornell is about 14,000 students. You're in upstate New York, surrounded by dairy farms and state parks. Well, I mean, that's Brookings. I mean, you're surrounded by, farms. You're surrounded by, farms in the plains. And so, the size of the towns are somewhat similar. There was just so many correlations that I started to make between the two universities. You talk about, Cornell being, a big agricultural, having a huge agricultural department. They have South Dakota State is very big ag. And so, again, I can't stress enough how much correlation there was. And so I'm sitting there thinking, and I'm saying, okay, this is a program that, took 12th in the country. They had their first national champion. It's about the same size school. It's in the Midwest. Now you have scholarships. And so I'm sitting there saying, like, you can recruit the same profile type athlete that you did at Cornell because of some of the similar programs. And so I'm sitting there saying, like, wow, this can be done. The South Dakota State has something, something special that I think with the right direction, the right people, they're on the forefront of doing something special, like a Cornell. And when I left Minnesota, God, over 12 years ago, and went to Cornell, people asked me, they said, "Where's Cornell?" And I said, "Oh, it's in New York." And they're like, "The city? You're moving to the city?" And I was like, "No, man, it is not the city. It's upstate New York, completely different." People couldn't even tell you in the wrestling world where Cornell was or what Cornell, what it is. And
or who it's named after.
Yeah, right, exactly. But 12 years later, in the wrestling world, you mention Cornell University, and it's a household name. People are like, "Oh, yeah, Cornell. Yeah, Cornell, New York. Yeah, Ivy League."
Ithaca.
They get it. Exactly. Where 12 years ago, no. And I feel like South Dakota State is where Cornell was 12 years ago. They're on the verge of something. They have the right things. They have the right ingredients. They just need to be brought together, and they can do something special. And so my goal, in 10, 12 years from now, I want people talking about South Dakota State University like they talk about Cornell, today. And that was probably the reason, because again, I was not leaving Cornell. I did not think, that was home, and we weren't going anywhere. But there was always a little thought of getting back to the Midwest, and because I think it fits me, my personality. My wife is from Minnesota. There was always that thought. And when the opportunity arose, and we sat down and then really started to think about it, it came together. It came together, and it was one of the hardest things hardest discussions that I've had to make or do is sit down with Rob and tell Rob, here's what I'm thinking. Here's where we're at. And, and Rob didn't want me to go. I mean, and at first I never thought I was leaving. And, over time it kind of changed. And then, that was a hard conversation I had with Rob, but he understood. I mean, it is as much as it stinks to have someone that you have worked with and spent countless hours and days and years with. This is also a testament to him and what type of coach he is, and how he's able to develop, people to go on and coach and take over, new Division I programs. So it was a hard conversation, but he's been there before, and he's somebody that I've said this, and I'm 100% behind it. I would walk into battle, blindfolded for that man. That's how much respect and trust that I have in him. And so that was a hard conversation to have. And then, when we finally did make the decision to do it, talking to my guys at Cornell and addressing them. And, I thought it would be a little bit easier than what happened, but literally, that was again another hard conversation, and it was even hard to get the words out. My voice cracked, and I couldn't talk, and it was just tough because you put so much of your life into what you're doing, and for the last 12 years, I mean, those guys, 12 years worth. I mean, they are my family. They are, they've been there, through thick and thin. I mean, they've got to see two of my boys, be born and raised, and they were a part of mine and my wife's life. So, I mean, it's hard leaving something like that. And if you're gonna leave something like that, I truly believe there's got to be something special on the other side, and that's what I think SDSU has. I think SDSU is a special place, and we just got to get people here to see it, and they'll see the vision and the thoughts and the drive that this place has, and what I have to accomplish something great.
When you look at where you're at, and now you're looking back at, you're closer to Minnesota, you're closer to Brandon Eggum, who's now leading the program that you guys were both scrapping with. You got to pay a little bit more attention to what Brandon's doing now, because you'll be battling over the same recruits. But when with what happened with Jay went down, and ultimately Brandon ended up being the guy that got the gig. I mean, from a distance, what do you think about the job Brandon's been doing so far?
Oh, I think it's good. I think just like any if you want to say new head coach, he needs time to get into a groove of his own, and really start to create, or not just create, but implement his vision and where he wants the program to go. He's been there since college, so he knows the program. He knows a lot of the ins and the outs. And, just like anybody, it takes time. It takes time to grow your vision and really get it out there. So, what he's doing, I mean, I think he's doing good. And, but again, my focus right now is to be honest, it's not on the University of Minnesota or North Dakota or Iowa, or it's on South Dakota State and what I need to do to accomplish the goals and the vision that I have for this program. You always have, you always have, these other things kind of off in the distance that you have some hands on, that what's happening, but I need to focus solely on my program here and the coaches that we have here and the guys that we have here and the administration that we have here to grow what we're trying to do.
Coming into the duel with Minnesota on Sunday at 1 p.m. at the Maturi Pavilion, Seth Gross is mentioned on Flow Wrestling, and he's out kind of dealing with the back injury, and you're coming into a situation where you've got a very feverish fan base. They're excited. Chris Bono really kind of put the gears in motion there, and sometimes when coaches leave, there is the attrition, there's the graduation rate. They might leave after a real peak season, but Bono left, and he left a lot of excitement for you. Also left you a little bit of work to do, not a whole lot of work in terms of, going from where he took the program to now. But, talk about what it's like to come in after, a lot of expectations on such a great finish. And how do you temper those expectations with the reality of the situation and looking at and accepting on what Chris did for the program and what you can do to just amplify that, as well as instituting your own system?
Yeah, no, like you said, sometimes coaches leave after a successful season, and that's what Chris did. I mean, he brought the program to 12th in the country, and hats off to him. I mean, and then what he was able to accomplish and his time frame here, is good. It really is. He leaves, and we graduated, I think, 8 seniors this past year. We had in that class, we had a Big 12 champ and 2 All-Americans. So what's left is we got Seth Gross returning national champ. So as a tournament wise, his cupboard's not bare. But he took Connor Brown with him, and some of the guys that he recruited ultimately. One of them didn't end up coming, but so I knew what I was getting when I walked into this program, for the most part, and I knew what was still here, and the recruits that they were talking to, and the guys that we were looking at bringing in. So there is definitely a lot of excitement around this program. The expectation for me, I mean, the bar doesn't change. I mean, the expectation is still there. I mean, the guys on this team, the people involved with this program, we all have the same vision, the same expectation. We want to win. We want to be successful. We want to develop our kids not only as athletes but as people. So, that is all still there. But this is a growing process. I mean, we need to continue to develop, because again, you lose a significant number of seniors, 8 of them. That's huge. And we have a young group of guys. Now, you look at our roster right now, we only have 2 seniors on our entire roster. So we're young. And I think, trying to establish some of that leadership, implementing a new system, and having these guys kind of understand it and gravitate towards it, is important in what we're trying to do. So I'm excited. The nice thing, I do believe that there are very few places in the country that support wrestling like they do here in Brookings, South Dakota. That was another major reason why I wanted to come, because we wrestled Oklahoma State here last weekend, and we had over 2,000 people in the stands. And that's absolutely amazing. I mean, and their average attendance for duels is 2,000. So, that is, it's not like some of these other programs where they might bring a Penn State to town and they'll get 5,000, and then they're getting 800 every other duel. I mean, like, these people come out, the town comes out, they support it. You go anywhere on, in town on this campus, and I mean, there's wrestling, there's, they support, the university in town, the Jackrabbits. I mean, it's pretty special. There's not a lot of places like it. And so the excitement's there. Again, I'll give Chris credit for that. But now my goal here is to, take this program to a new level. And that takes time. I mean, you look at, what Rob Koll has been able to build, at Cornell. He's been there going on 30 years. And it wasn't until the last 13 of them that, wow, things took off. And I'm not saying it's going to take us that long. It better not take me that long. But I do believe we have all the right things in place to bring it to a new level. And, 12th in the country from an outsider's perspective, so some might say, hey, Chris, got out at the right time, buddy. But no, I believe that 12th is not the ceiling. I mean, there is so much more room to grow. And I think with the coaching style that I have, coming from, Minnesota, Cornell, and what we were able to accomplish, and implementing that with our guys here, I think it's going to be, I think it's going to, take these kids and develop them and help them, along the way. Not only as student athletes, but just as people in general. I think, the knowledge that I've been able to acquire, over the years, I can't, and we're already implementing it, and I just can't wait to see how it grows. It grows, and we take this program to a new level.
Last thing I've got for you, because the Damion Hahn hour has stretched into almost 2 hours at this point, and a lot of great stuff here. And we've known each other a long time, so like some of this stuff isn't new. Some of this stuff is great new stuff that I haven't heard, we haven't talked about before. But the last thing, I think the biggest drawback of you leaving Cornell and now going to Brookings is you no longer have the pleasure of having one screwy Louis Lazari just knock on your door whenever he wants.
So you had to go there, huh? You wanted to go there.
I have to set that up, too. I have to set that up because...
You've been waiting for the last hour and 40 minutes to bring up Screwy Louie.
Because it's like note number 2 on my notebook here. So back to where we talked about 1998, the Junior Olympics. So this guy emails me out of the blue, and he says, yeah, I'll be down there with my laptop if you need any help. And I meet him, and he's got a shirt, and it's like Damion Hahn Fan Club or something like that. I mean, you had T-shirts people were making T-shirts for you in high school. This guy that was the first time I was introduced to Screwy Louie, and just all around, wrestling junkie, a guy that's has been a fan of yours and a fan of Cornell's for a long time. Yeah, no,
I got to know Louie back in 1990, I believe. Battle Creek, Michigan. It was like the AAU, I think it was AAU Grand Nationals. And he's wrestling in the tournament. And me and I think it was my sister maybe, and we're playing around on the mats during a break or something. And we were kind of over by him, and I think he grabbed us and was like, hey, you guys want to coach me? And we're like, heck yeah, we'll coach you. Not knowing a whole lot, and literally that's how the friendship started. And he has never left me alone since. It's terrible. Boy, I made a big mistake. But no, I mean, everybody who knows Louie, he has a phenomenal heart. Loves the sport of wrestling, is passionate about it. When I was growing up, he's what, 5'2" maybe. He's a short little Italian, and but he can wrestle. He knows how to scramble. I mean, he's not bad. And there was a point where
he was a Division III All-American back in the day, to his credit. That is legit.
Yep, he was. Yep, he's a Division III All-American, and he does know how to wrestle. And so for a while, he was one of my workout partners. I credit him to help me learn how to scramble because, if anybody knows Louie, I mean, whatever screen name or whatever he has, is Granby Man. His license plate on his car says Granby. So he knows how to roll around, and I credit him to, teaching me how to scramble and move on the mat a little bit. So it's, I can't talk about, what I have done as a wrestler and not have him a part of it because, he is a big part of my family, and he's been out here to Brookings, and, I'm sure he'll be coming out again in the near future. It's a little bit harder to get to than Ithaca, but it's definitely he is a good friend and a big part of our family.
We'll just have the people of Brookings who haven't yet met Screwy Louie just brace themselves. All right, Damion, we're still coming off that Thanksgiving Day hangover. We'll see you out at the Sports Pavilion. Great discussion about where you came from, how you ended up at the U, and best of luck in the success you've got at South Dakota State.
Hey, man, thanks a lot. I appreciate it. Now I'm going to head to practice.
Support wrestling in the land of 10,000 wrestlers by subscribing to The Guillotine. 9 issues a year for just $20, the best value in Minnesota wrestling. Subscribe at theguillotine.com/subscribe.
This show is part of the Matt Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to MattTalkOnline.com.